The punishment and suffering endured by the people of the Congo Free State under King Leopold II remain among the darkest chapters in human history. This period, spanning from the late 19th century into the early 20th century, saw mass atrocities that some historians have compared to the Holocaust. At the center of it all was Leopold II of Belgium, a man whose name today is synonymous with exploitation, cruelty, and colonial greed. During the 1800s, sub-Saharan Africa remained largely unexplored by Europeans. Only the coastal regions had been colonized. This was soon to change, as European empires turned their eyes inward. King Leopold II of Belgium saw Africa not as a continent of diverse peoples and cultures, but as a vast reservoir of wealth waiting to be claimed. To turn his imperial ambitions into reality, Leopold needed a scout. In 1879, he sent famed explorer and journalist Henry Morton Stanley to survey the Congo River basin. Operating under the guise of humanitarianism and anti-slavery efforts, Stanley founded trading posts, military forts, and transport routes. He also signed treaties with over 500 Congolese chieftains, chiefs who had no understanding of European legal documents and received only bags of salt or cloth in return. In essence, they unknowingly surrendered their land and people. At the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, European nations gathered to divide Africa. This period became known as the Scramble for Africa. Leopold used cunning diplomacy to secure the Congo Basin for himself, gaining recognition from other powers and declaring the territory the Congo Free State. The name was bitterly ironic. There was nothing free about it for the millions of Congolese people. Leopold was now the absolute ruler of a region nearly 80 times the size of Belgium. To control such vast land and population, Leopold relied on new technologies. The first was modern weaponry. Breech-loading rifles like the Albini replaced outdated muskets. They fired faster, farther, and more accurately. African resistors, with bows and spears, stood no chance. Second, came medical advancements. European mortality rates dropped dramatically due to treatments for malaria and yellow fever, such as quinine. Finally, the paddle steamboat allowed faster navigation of the Congo River system. Now, European agents could move quickly and enforce Leopold's rule deep into the interior. By the late 1890s, rubber had become one of the world's most valuable resources. Thanks to the invention of inflatable bicycle tires and the rise of automobiles, global demand skyrocketed. Leopold saw this as a golden opportunity to pay off debts and turn the Congo into a cash machine. Rubber harvesting became the center of the colony's economy. But to maximize profits, Leopold turned to forced labor. Whole villages were conscripted. Men were sent into forests to collect latex from rubber trees, often for days without food. The policy became known as the Red Rubber System, so named for the African blood spilled to enforce it. To enforce the rubber quotas, Leopold created the Force Publique in 1885. This private army was made up of European officers and African conscripts. They were given modern rifles and a brutal whip called the chicote, made of hippo hide. Anyone who disobeyed was whipped, often to death. Entire villages were burned. Children and women were taken hostage until rubber quotas were met. If a man refused to work, his wife might be killed. If a village resisted, the soldiers would destroy it. One of the most disturbing features of Leopold's rule was the policy of amputation. Soldiers were ordered to bring back the right hands of anyone they shot, as proof that bullets hadn't been wasted. Hands became a twisted form of accountability. But the practice soon turned into a widespread mutilation campaign. Hands, ears, and noses were cut off not just from the dead, but also from the living. In some cases, soldiers collected hands simply to shorten their service. These severed hands became a type of currency. Survivors told of playing dead while soldiers hacked off limbs nearby. In one documented case, Force Publique soldiers drowned 10 villagers, tying them in a fishing net weighted with stones before tossing them into the river. At Stanley Falls, Captain Lyon Ram decorated his flower beds with 21 severed heads. He was not unique. Such grotesque displays of brutality were widespread. Even Leopold objected to the mutilation not out of compassion, but pragmatism. He is quoted as saying, "Cut off everything else, but not their hands. The one thing I need in the Congo is hands." The true number of deaths during Leopold's rule is unknown. Estimates vary, but all are staggering. British journalist Edmund Dean Morell estimated that the population of the Congo was 20 million before Leopold took over. After his departure, it was closer to 10 million. That means half the population perished. From massacres, disease, starvation, and exhaustion. Diseases like sleeping sickness, smallpox, and venereal infections, some introduced by Europeans, ran rampant. Birth rates plummeted. Communities collapsed. An entire generation was lost. The atrocities committed in the Congo Free State were not accidents. They were part of a systematic, organized campaign of exploitation. Millions died under the direct and indirect policies of King Leopold II. Figures like Edmund Morell and Mark Twain helped expose the truth to the world. And eventually, international pressure forced Leopold to surrender the Congo to the Belgian government in 1908. But the damage had already been done. To this day, the scars of that era remain. The story of the Congo Free State is a grim reminder of what happens when greed, racism, and unchecked power are allowed to flourish. It is a history we must continue to tell. Not only to honor the dead, but to ensure that such horrors are never repeated.